Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
We meaning Seth and Derek had an idea, and we were going to make a video and maybe a series of videos or something. Maybe make it into a podcast or something, and call it Beers with the Boys.
Just chat about life with beers and the boys.
So here's to episode 1.
So Seth had an idea about what to talk about today to start off a silly random topic that would be fun to explore. So why don't you start us off, bud?
And I have the perfect costume prop here, which is Derek's pirate sword that we had at King Richard's Fair. But actually, so very seriously, and I'll give the background first. So when I was growing up, when I was a child, I had a lot of what I would call paranormal experiences. I had feelings of like things standing over my bed and things that were like angry and didn't have my best intentions in mind. And I was in the monastery then for many years as a monk, and I experienced a lot of different and interesting things there. But something specifically I want to mention is that I did ayahuasca once, and this is the kind of hallucinogenic plant brew from the Amazons. And it was this ayahuasca ceremony. So we take this, substance, and then all night long we're with a fire, and there's like a shaman there kind of guiding it. And everyone's having visualizations and going through all this stuff. And at the end of the night, the ceremony was over, and I, had this huge kind of experience myself. And I talked to the boy next to me, what happened. And this my friend Lloyd, right? This kid I met from England. This was in India, actually.
Cool.
And he was like one of the least spiritual people.
Okay.
I know. He self-admittedly also, right? Not a very spiritual dude.
Yeah.
And I was like, how was your trip? And he said, well, I had he had his blanket with him. So he's like, I put my blanket over my head, and suddenly I saw a snake come into the blanket and curl around me, and then put its face right up in front of him. And then it touched its face to his third eye, and then the snake disappeared. And he said, but it wasn't like a normal snake. He said it was like, instead of scales, it was like feathers, and it was like a multicolored snake. And we looked it up online together, and for ayahuasca, there's like a spirit guide or a spirit being associated with the substance, and it's the feathered rainbow serpent.
Huh.
And he had no idea, right? So what that kind of said to me, and that's my interpretation of that, was that there are, these beings that maybe by taking certain substances like this, you're plugging in to beings that are maybe not like we are physical beings, and then maybe there's beings existing in a non-physical way, but through having certain mind states or certain, whatever, we can connect to them or certain substances. Maybe even there's a being connected to pine trees and a being connected to pumpkins, and there's beings connected to things. I have no idea, right? But it reminded me of kind of the things I had going on as a kid, and I had this thought that what if the same way that there's beings out there that you can kind of plug into and connect to, but what started to feel like it is, well, what if there's beings out there that are controlling groups of people? What if there's like the old pictures I've seen of the Renaissance of good and evil, and kind of what if movements in society, what if ideas, sicknesses, illnesses, addictions, what if there's actually a being kind of like a virus where it inhabits many hosts, but it's one cloud of something moving through people? What if different energies of love and hate and greed and all this, what if they're actually different beings working through a human collective or something like that? So I've had these kinds of ideas, and then also more specifically, again, in the monastery, we had many experiences with, I'll say ghosts, people that have passed on and are still kind of here in a non-physical way, but still perceivable, and sometimes they make themselves known more physically. And again, in the monastery with a lot of these meditators and a lot of people that, people that have been monks since they were kids growing up in Vietnam and in Thailand and stuff, they're like, yeah, this is a real thing in our monastery too. And people would come in possessed, and we'd do ceremonies, and, and then also giving the energy healings that I give as well, and feeling beings coming into the room and working with me, and they're helpful beings. But of course, if there's beings that are helping, there's also ones that aren't helping, right? And so what I wanted to talk about was actually, I wanted to talk about demons, or maybe like negative energies, or beings that are maybe harmful or don't have our best interests in mind in some way. And I mentioned this topic to Derek, and his feedback to me was like, this isn't necessarily his area of specialty exactly like this, but he has like another way of talking about it, interpreting it.
Well, I think it's good because it pushes my comfort zone about like, well, like just like the term like demons, for instance. I think of, like you said, negative energy. Like that's something that I go, yeah, totally. Like that is something that like resonates with my like frame of reality. But when we like personify an energy into like an actual being, like an entity that has like a conscious intentional thought just as we do, that like pushes my comfort zone. I'm like, oh shit, does that exist? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, right? I can't say yes, I can't say no. But to Seth's point earlier, right, we do have wacky experiences that we can't fully explain, and that like logic can't necessarily define what happened, but we know what we know. We know what we experienced, right. And we say that was bizarre.
Yes.
Right? And why did I have such detail like your friend? Why did he have like the feathered rainbow serpent, not just an energy that was like coming up through me, right?
Or like a snake that he's seen before,
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a specific details, right? And whether or not that just is mind personifying this energy form, the reality is like energy has feelings attached to it, right? And to your point about demons, if we define demon as at very least as like a negative energy form, right? And then why is that not a being? Everything is conscious and everything has an awareness to it. So why wouldn't energy that we can't necessarily physically see, yet we can be affected by it, we can feel it, be alive?
Right.
And what is the
and
effect
also
on
the
us,
same
right?
way, we know pretty much nothing about consciousness.
Yeah.
So the same way that, our parents conceived us, right? That there's like a material coming together, and then a consciousness entered into that kind of material level stuff. How do we know that our thoughts don't also, like, what if me and you both at the same time imagine Kirby from Mario, like a pink kind of like creature up here floating.
He was my jam.
He was awesome. He wasn't the best in Smash Brothers,
Nah,
but
he was my move, that.
But
Sky
like,
drops,
imagine if we like, what if there's a Kirby spirit animal, this little
Yeah.
pink fluffy guy right here, and we both imagine it, but we both believe it. What if through our collective thought forms, it creates a vessel in which a consciousness can enter? And there's something to be said about that. There's actually a word for it, which I'm blanking on right now. But Tibetan monks, they also, they pray to these different gods and deities and stuff to protect them and to be with them. And it's like this exchange, like, I'll keep you alive by giving you my attention and by giving you attention and energy. And in return, you're going to help me.
I've got to say, there's something interesting about the fact that all of these different indigenous cultures around the world that are in completely remote places that had zero contact with any other indigenous cultures that weren't directly like adjacent to them,
as far as we know,
right, that all have these similar themes of like praying to beings that you can't take a picture of per se, right? Yet they can all describe it and talk about them and believe them, right? Whether they're like an angelic like being, which I would represent as like a positive energy, right? Or the demon-like energy of the negative energy, which then becomes an actual being because of all this collective agreement, this consciousness agreement that this exists, right? Like these crazy stories of in different cultures when there's like a fable of like what was that, like the stick man?
Slender Man.
The Slender Man, right? That's a perfect example of like, here is something that if enough people believe and give energy for, that space comes for that being to take form, like you're saying. And then other people that weren't even a part of it then now might tap into that consciousness or be affected by it because it's been created.
So I want to talk about
Yeah.
Slender Man in this
Okay,
too. I
okay.
have actually a whole thing to say about that. Starting with my point, just to make sure I get it out, and then I feel like I'll be like more free to let this conversation flow.
Run with it.
As
run
well.
with it.
So pretty much all that I wanted to say, my original message. So when I was doing healing work, I do healing and I build a mandala out of crystals, and then I channel energy to the room. And I was in India and I was buying crystals for the mandala, and I was walking through India in this part, and I felt drawn to a certain crystal shop, and I went in there, and I just felt drawn to this one part, and I went, and there was crystals, and none of them really spoke to me, and the energy in there was kind of dirty. I don't know how to say, like the place wasn't really taken care of. The actual merchandise wasn't great quality, but something was really drawing me to take a certain, to buy something there. And I bought something, and then I, brought it to my healing teacher, and I was like, yeah, and I kind of told him the story that something felt off, and he took the crystal and he looked at it and he's like, this is a fake. And I said, well, like what was that all about? And he kind of like thought about it, and he looked at me and he's like, I think that's black magic. And I was, said, I don't know what that means or what that is. Mm-hmm. And he's like, and the crystal shop was run actually by like a Baba, like an Indian, like holy practitioner kind of guy running a store, which is weird. But he said it's something like, that they create like an energetic web that pulls you in to give them money, but there's nothing there to it. And I said, well, I want to go back then and give him the crystal and demand money back. And he looked at me and he said, bury it. And I said, I want to go and stand up for myself. And he said, bury it. And I said, why? And so this is my healing teacher. He said, when he started off on the healing path, he was like, I'm now a light worker and I'm powerful. And he just said, I just went around blasting like all the evil and the darkness and just blasting that stuff, the negativity with as much light as he could. And then, calling in more light and kind of just trying to be this huge force for good and destroy everything. But he said what he realized was the more light that he brought, the more darkness would then arise to meet him. And
It's the polarity.
It's the polarity. Yeah. And then what he said to me was, what demons actually want? And it's your attention.
Yeah.
That
focus.
By giving them attention, by giving them focus,
feeding energy,
they
right?
feed energetically off of it.
Yeah.
And he said to me, if you're ever giving a healing and a demon or an energy or something comes in, he said, you don't pay attention to it. You just give more into the mandala that I created. He's like, you just send more love to the people. That by focusing on goodness, by doing good, you become almost like a non-stick pan. When you act virtuously, it's like that stuff has no place to stick to you and it just moves through. But what demons want is they want your attention. They want to keep you engaged and involved. And they'll play all sorts of games and roles and tricks to keep you there, to keep you connected to them. Yeah, because they want that energy. And so that was actually the main thing, all that I wanted to say to people was like, if you find yourself with like a difficult negative energy, and a lot of us are like struggling and grappling and pushing and pulling, why don't you try, you can see that it's there, but why not try focusing on the good things, creating good, doing good, building up another energy that shifts the whole situation and maybe pushes that out because you're not giving it your attention. And this is, and I'm sure you can even get more into this, that this is an understanding, I wouldn't say a philosophy necessarily, but like an understanding that also goes into relationships, into interpersonal situations, into personal growth situations. Things that you give them power by giving them attention.
Well, where focus goes, energy flows, right? And that works in your favor if it's positive energy, against you if it's negative energy. I think it is really easy, as we all want to create meaning from everything that happens in our lives, right? And when something negative happens in our life, especially if it's like painful, it's not like mildly uncomfortable, but it's painful or disturbing, right? Then we're gonna really want to know, what does this mean? Why did this happen to me, right? To me, rather than for me. And with that like victim mindset, then we're gonna think like, oh, this demon, like this thing is out to get me, and we're going to give it attention, we're focusing on it, and we're like, why did this have to happen to me, right? Or it's particularly painful if it's not even you, it's someone that you love, right? I mean, I think this is something that happens to a lot of us, right? Whether it's to ourselves, it's a loved one of any capacity, right? And we see them being affected by a demon that has control over them, right? And they keep feeding the monster, feeding the beast. Oh, this is my story. This is like something that's happened to me. You don't understand. This is something I have to deal with it.